Hard times don't check the calendar. Make sure you're ready no matter what, no matter when. Putting together DIY shelf-stable prepper pantry meals, holiday edition. Hey guys, it's Jara with Get Prepared. Welcome to the channel. We know the importance of having shelf-stable food on hand to get us through when we're cut off from the outside world. Whether it's a hurricane, an ice storm, or something worse, a lockdown or attack, or even a personal financial crisis, being able to feed ourselves and our families is crucial. We like to take that one step further by creating emergency meal kits, complete shelf-stable dishes and meals that are completely self-contained in a bag or a jar and ready to go at a moment's notice. This saves us from peering into our pantry in the height of a crisis, stressed out and staring blankly at those shelf-stable ingredients, wondering what on earth to make out of them. When I'm stocking my shelves with shelf-stable meals, I like to include some holiday meals and dishes as well, because let's face it, we can't control when an emergency or disaster happens. And if we have to navigate a situation that occurs during or stretches through the holidays, it can provide a huge comfort and sense of normalcy to have a special holiday meal and keep a bit of tradition in some small way. So today I've got 4 new recipes for your prepper pantry that will have you covered when you need a special meal. I'll show you 3 special holiday side dishes in a jar for just add water tradition and a complete holiday meal in a bag with some extra special touches that's amazingly all from Dollar Tree. These dishes are equally well suited for Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, or really any time you want to make a meal just a little more special. Let's jump in and get started. The first recipe I'm sharing with you today is a sweet potato casserole. Did you ever notice when it comes to holiday meals, every side gets made into a casserole? With an everyday meal, we might have corn or green beans or sweet potatoes as a side dish. But for the holidays, those inevitably get made into green bean casserole, corn casserole, and sweet potato casserole. I've even made a couple of different pineapple casseroles for Easter dinners. Sweet potato casserole is a favorite of my family, so I knew I had to make it into a shelf-stable mason jar meal that we could have anytime at a moment's notice. Let's get started. This dish is going to be made into a wide mouth quart-sized mason jar, and I've got a canning funnel here to make it easier. The first ingredient is going to be sweet potatoes, freeze-dried sweet potatoes. And I've got 2 different kinds of sweet potatoes here just to show you. You could use either one if you already have one of these. You can see that these are a deeper orange color. This is closer to what I usually use when I make my sweet potato casserole. These look a little rough because these are roasted, but even though they're roasted though, the only ingredient is sweet potatoes. They have no oil or salt or seasonings added to them. So still just sweet potatoes, just a different, deeper color. And these are a little bit lighter color. So I have made the casserole with these lighter ones. It tastes the same, but it doesn't have that same deeper orange color that I'm accustomed to. So I'm going to use these today. I'm going to be using 3 cups, but before I put them in the jar, they are going to be sort of blended and chopped up a little bit. I'm going to be using a little mini food processor, little mini food chopper. This is a Ninja. I've had this for a long time. I do think they still sell it, so I'll link to it down below. But any little mini food processor or probably a large food processor would work. I like the choppers or processors better for this task because I'm not trying to powder this. It's going to have some powder, but I still want some small pieces. And anytime I use a bullet blender, it tends to just really, really powder it. So when I want to powder something, I go for my bullet blender. When I just want to have it a little more crushed and chopped and not completely pulverized, I go for my chopper. I'm going to be using 3 cups. Not sure if I can get them all in here at the same time. I think I'm going to do these 1 cup at a time just to give myself a little bit more control over the process. I have done a cup and a half in here before, and that worked fine, but I'm going to do 1 cup at a time. I am keeping an eye on this. Like I said, there's going to be some powder and some bigger pieces. This is almost ready. The powder is really down at the bottom, so you can't see it. I'm going to go a little bit further on this. I think this is pretty good. It's mostly very small pieces and powder with a few bigger chunks, which is kind of how I would do it if I cooked these from fresh and then mashed them. I'm gonna go ahead and pour that into here and do my next couple of cups. Now, of course, this is a matter of personal preference. If you prefer a very smooth puree, then you might want to pulverize these a little bit further, or I don't think you'd want to leave too much bigger chunks because you want to make sure that you're not going to have anything that doesn't get soft and doesn't all come together in this process. So there's all of our sweet potato puree, basically, what will be our sweet potato puree in the jar. And now I'm going to add the rest of my ingredients for the casserole and then the topping. Next, I'm adding some sugar. This is just regular white sugar. This is 1/3 cup. This is actually cut down a little bit from the original recipe. The original recipe is really sweet and really rich. This is going to be plenty sweet enough, I think, but you could always bump it up to 1/2 cup if you wanted it sweeter. Next, I'm adding some salt. I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'm adding some vanilla powder. So I'm going to be adding 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla powder. See, this really is kind of like a dessert, but it's probably why people love it so much. Next, I'm going to be adding some scrambled egg powder. I'm going to be adding 2 tablespoons of the scrambled egg powder. Now, 2 tablespoons, of course, is the same as 1/8 cup. So if you have 1/8 cup measure, I like to just use that. 1 scoop saves a step. In fact, I use these little 1/8 cup, 2 tablespoon scoops so often that I've bought a few sets of them, so I always have one handy. And next I'm going to be adding some butter powder. I'm going to be adding 1/4 cup of the butter powder. Now, butter powder is something that can tend to clump if it's been sitting for a little while, open for a while, because I think of the fat content in it probably. So if you need to, you can run this through like a wire mesh strainer or something to get clumps out. I don't have any clumps in mine right now, but I have done that in the past. Next, I'm going to do the topping mixture. I am using a fold top sandwich baggie to put my topping ingredients in. I like to use the fold top ones. I just don't like to have to deal with the bulk of the zipper in the jar. I have plenty of room in this jar, but sometimes it's a little bit of a tighter fit, and without that zipper, it works a lot better. I'm going to be using some brown sugar. I've got granulated brown sugar. That's what I use in my jar meals because you can see it's very free-flowing. They also call it pourable brown sugar. And so it doesn't have the moisture that the regular brown sugar has. It is just brown sugar, though. If you look at the ingredients, it just says brown sugar. There are a couple of clumps in here, but they break right up. It's just because I found an older opened canister that I didn't remember that I had, so I dumped it in here. I usually have to order this. It is Domino brand, so you may have it in your local grocery store. I've never seen it in my grocery store. It comes in a little canister thing like you would have on a coffee bar or something. I buy it in, I use this, like I said, in all of my meals in a jar that use a brown sugar ingredient. So I use quite a bit of it. So I think it's like a nine pack maybe that I usually order because it's the cheapest per bottle. The other place I've seen it for a decent price is like a restaurant store kind of restaurant supply website, but the shipping that they have makes it that I don't order from there. So I do it from Amazon or Walmart. I'll put a link down in the description below for anybody who's looking for this. For the topping, I'm going to be using 1/3 cup of this granulated brown sugar. And I'm using some flour. So this is just 2 tablespoons of regular all-purpose flour. And then I'm also adding a little bit of butter powder to the topping. Just 1 tablespoon of the butter powder for this. So now I can just twist this up, tuck that down in there, so that's ready to go. And in the remaining little space that I have at the top of the jar, you can see there's a little bit of space left. I'm going to be adding one of these ghee packets. So this is like clarified butter. So this is a way for me to have a little bit of kind of, it's not butter, but something closer to real butter, because there's certain things that you're just not going to get the effect with a powdered butter product. And the way that this topping comes together, it really kind of needs a little bit of a butter. So I like to include this in here so that I have everything. I like to do my jar meals to be just add water mixes when I can. I don't like to have to have extra ingredients that somebody needs, because you never know. If you're in an emergency situation, you might not have butter. If you give this to someone to help somebody out or just as a gift, they may not have butter. You don't know. So I like to have it just add water. I have done the topping mix with a little more butter powder and a little bit of water but it works okay, but it's not quite the same. So this one is going to have this ghee packet. I will have a link to these down below as well. Now all that's left is just put the lid on and label this, and it is ready for the shelf. Now, of course, you know I'm not going to put this on the shelf. I'm going to fix this up and show you how it comes together and what it looks like when it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and open my jar. The first thing I'm going to do is mix up the topping. So I am going to start by melting this ghee. Now, I will probably just use the microwave today because I have electricity, but of course you could do this on a stovetop. You could put this packet into a like a pot of warm hot water to melt it. There's lots of different ways that you could do that. I'm going to get this out into the bowl. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and melt this really quickly. All right, so there it is, all melted. And I'm just going to take our little packet of topping. I'm going to try to kind of blend this together before I pour it out. Could have done that before I put it in, but just mix that flour and sugar together. And now I'm just going to put it in here and kind of toss it around and get that melted ghee distributed throughout the topping. It's going to end up making a crumbly topping. Just going to mash up all the larger clumps of fat in there. And then that actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and set that aside. Now I'm going to mix up our sweet potato mixture. So I'm going to take the rest of what's in the jar and just dump it into my bowl. And I'm going to add about 2 cups of water to this mixture. But what I like to do is first pour the water into the jar that I used for my meal, because that way I can get out all those powdery bits that are left behind, so we don't lose any of the flavor or anything that we put in there. And I'm just going to start mixing this all together. And it is going to be pretty soupy when I make this fresh. It starts off pretty soupy when it goes into the oven, and it will firm up as it cooks. But the other thing is that some of these larger chunks of sweet potato are going to keep absorbing the water and the moisture, as is the powder as well. So we're going to give this about 10 minutes just to sit and absorb before we put it in the pan. And then I can check the moisture, and if I think that it needs more based on how this usually looks when I make this fresh, I can add more. But I think this will be good because this is what I've used in the past. So I'm going to go ahead and let this set for about 10 minutes. All right, 10-minute timer is up. This has thickened up some just from liquid absorbing. I'm going to go ahead and get this into my pan, which is going to be an 8-inch square pan. I'm not even going to put any nonstick spray in this just because, you know, in an emergency situation, you never know if you would have that or not. So I'm just going to go without it. Smells super yummy. And now I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle this topping right over the top of the sweet potatoes. This is quite a bit of topping. Sometimes if I'm making this, sometimes I'll take some of the topping and stick it in the freezer and save it for another batch because it is quite a bit. But this is my kids' favorite part. It's what really makes it. Sometimes I put pecans in the topping, but since not everybody likes nuts, I've gotten to where I kind of leave that off a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven at 350, and I'll see you back here when it's done. All right, so it's been about 25 minutes, just under, in this casserole. This is the sweet potato casserole. It is all set, and the topping has crisped up. And so this, I'm going to let it just cool a little bit. This should cool for at least 15 to 20 minutes before it is served. But this is ready to go. All right, this casserole has been cooling for a little bit. Now I'm going to give it a try, and we'll see how it is. Here it is. All right, I am ready to give this a try. This is really tasty. Super yummy. Every bit as good as the fresh version. This casserole has that nice deep orange color and a rich sweet potato flavor, being made with the roasted sweet potatoes. I've also made this with the other freeze-dried sweet potatoes that I showed you, and it still tasted great. But the flavor and especially the color were quite a bit lighter. But some people prefer that. It's just 2 different kinds of sweet potatoes, I think. So if you already have one or the other, you can use whichever one you have. Or if you don't have freeze-dried sweet potatoes, you can buy whichever you think you'd prefer. I even think it could be good to use a combination of both. If you freeze dry your own food, you could even cook and mash the sweet potato before freeze drying and skip the chopping step of this recipe. Lots of options for this one. If you want printable copies of any of my meal in a jar recipes, visit us at wickedprepared.com. I'll put the link down below. And I also have a whole playlist here on YouTube of meal in a jar recipes that you can check out if you want to see some more ideas. It's amazing the kind of meals and dishes that you can get from a simple mason jar. The next recipe I'm sharing today is for a corn casserole. This is also sometimes called spoon bread or corn pudding, and it's basically a souped up cornbread mix with extra corn, cream corn, things like that added in. Just like sweet potato casserole, my family loves it, and we serve it with many special meals. It's not just for holidays. For the corn casserole, I'm also using a wide mouth quart jar, and I'm going to be starting off with some flour. So I've got a 1/4 cup of flour here, just all-purpose flour. And next, I'm going to be using some cornmeal. So I've also got a 1/4 cup of the cornmeal and also a 1/4 cup of sugar. So this is just regular white granulated sugar. Next, I'm going to be adding some baking powder. So a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and I do like to run things like this through my wire mesh strainer just to get out any clumps and make sure that there's no clumps in the mixture. And I'm also going to be adding some baking soda, so a 1/4 teaspoon of the baking soda. And I am doing the same thing with the baking soda. Next, I'm going to be adding some butter powder, 1/4 cup of the butter powder, and sometimes I'll do the same thing with the butter powder. If it looks clumpy at all, I will sometimes run it through the strainer as well. This doesn't really look like it's clumpy, so I'm just going to put it in there. And next, some salt, so a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And now for the corn. So this is freeze-dried corn. This is going to be exactly what we need for this. It is going to have the long shelf life. It's not going to be hard and dried out like dehydrated corn would be. So I'm going to be using 2 cups, but I am dividing this into two different parts. So the first cup is just going to go straight into the jar as is. So 1 cup of the freeze-dried corn. And then the next cup is going to go into my little mini food processor, or anything where you can chop it up. Like I mentioned with the sweet potatoes, we don't want to just completely powder it. This is supposed to be standing in for the cream corn that would be in this recipe. So we want it chopped up into smaller pieces. Some powder is okay, but we don't want to completely powder it. So watch out for blenders and bullet blenders and things like that. So here is my 2nd cup of corn. And just to demonstrate, I am going to show you, if you wanted, you could put the corn into like a freezers, like a Ziploc baggie like this, and seal it up and just kind of take a rolling pin to it. And you can see that that is breaking up the corn into smaller pieces without completely powdering it. So that's another way that you can do this. I just prefer to do it in here because I have it and I think it's easier. It saves my fingers and all that. It's not going to take long at all to get that how we need it. So this is going to be like our cream corn. I'm going to go ahead and dump this right into my jar as well. And next I need some scrambled egg powder. I am using 2 tablespoons of the scrambled egg powder, which is the same as 1/8 cup. And next I'm adding some sour cream powder. I don't have this in a canister yet. For years and years I have used Thrive Life sour cream powder, and I found lots of other brands, certain other brands were not compatible. Like they had a different flavor. They were tangier, they were too sour, something like that. So I wanted to find one that was going to work because I know that nobody can get the Thrive Life sour cream powder anymore. So I was testing this Judy's, and this performs very, very similar. It has the same sort of flavor and smell and works the same in the recipes. So I will be putting this into a canister after I use up what I have out. But for this recipe, I wanted to make sure that I'm using something that everyone's able to get if they don't already have sour cream powder. And I am using a 1/2 cup of the sour cream powder. And that is our casserole, our corn casserole. All we need to do is put a lid on and get it labeled and ready to go on the shelf. But of course, I am not going to put this on the shelf. I'm going to fix it up and show you how it comes out. I'm just going to go ahead and open the jar and dump it into my bowl. And I'm going to go ahead and add about 1 2/3 cups of water. But once again, I am going to start by putting that into the jar and just using it to rinse out any last remnants of mix in the jar. And I'm just going to get this blended. And now that I've got it all blended, I'm going to go ahead and dump this into another 8-inch square pan. Now that I've got that in the pan, I'm going to go ahead and stick this in a 350-degree oven as well. Right now, 25 minutes later, our corn casserole is done as well. So I'm going to let this one cool a little bit too. It's springy, so you can tell that it's done, but this is going to be better when it cools off a little bit. All right, so our corn casserole has cooled for probably 15 to 20 minutes. And now I am ready to serve it up and try it. All right, here it is. I love corn casserole. And this is perfect. Next up, I've got what I'm calling a convertible recipe. This is featuring a holiday staple, cranberries. I love canned cranberry sauce, but sometimes it's nice to go all out and have some fresh cranberry sauce on your holiday table. Something else that my grandmother always makes for special holiday dinners is a cranberry relish. This is an uncooked dish that consists of simply cranberries and an orange, ground up together and sweetened with sugar. My grandmother always makes this with her old-fashioned meat grinder and serves it in a beautiful glass dish with red cherries and gold accents that she got from her mother-in-law, my great-grandmother. And it just wouldn't be a holiday dinner without it. This next recipe I've designed to do double duty as a cranberry relish or a cranberry sauce. So if you add a little bit of cold water to the jar contents, you get a cranberry relish. If you add a bit more water and simmer it briefly, you've got a cranberry sauce that's much more special than anything you can get from a can. For the cranberries, once again, I'm using the wide mouth quart jar, and I am starting with freeze-dried cranberries. These, along with many of the other ingredients that I've used today, are on sale for Black Friday, just through today and tomorrow if you're watching this video when it first comes out. So I'll have links down below and any coupon codes you need if you want to go check that out and try to pick some things up on really good deals. I'm going to be using 3 cups of the cranberries, and like with the other ingredients, I am going to be chopping them roughly in my little chopper. So there's 1 cup. I'm going to do it a cup at a time just to make it easier. Now these are somewhat chopped to begin with, at least they are kind of sliced. That helps with things like cranberries that have a skin. It helps them actually freeze dry more fully and more quickly. So typically, you would make this relish with whole berries that would either go through a grinder or a food processor. And this is actually something that you could do either before or after you add the water, so I'm going to do it before, and if I need to, I could do a little bit more after, but it's usually fine like it is. All right, there's my 2nd cup. And my final 3rd cup of cranberries. All right, so now I've got all my cranberries in the jar, and now I just need to put just a few additional ingredients, and this will be ready to go. Next, I'm adding sugar, just plain white granulated sugar. I'm adding 2/3 of a cup to this. Now, my grandmother always says she just adds the sugar to taste. This is what I think is the right amount for this amount, but you can always play around with this. If you like things sweeter, you can add more sugar. If you like it more tart, you can have less sugar. Just remember, cranberries are really, really tart on their own, so they really do need a good amount of sugar. Next, I'm going to be adding some orange juice powder. So I get this from Firehouse Flavors, awesome store. I'm going to put a link down below. You'll be amazed at everything that they have. I would not recommend trying to substitute something like this just straight across. If you want to try something like this, experiment with it on your own. But I have tasted this side by side with like an orange juice powder like this. It's just not the same thing. So if you want to use something like this instead, then tread lightly and just experiment. I like using the orange juice powder, and then I've got one more thing that I use along with it, which is a little bit of dried orange zest. So that gives it a good kind of orangey flavor. So for the orange juice powder, I'm using 1 tablespoon, and then I'm going to be adding a teaspoon of the orange zest. And I will put a link to all of these products down in the video description so that you can find them if you have a hard time. So that's all there is to this jar. Go ahead and get the lid on and a label and get this on the shelf. Now, if you want to store these for longer than, say, a year or so, you can vacuum seal them to make them last longer on the shelf. This one looks especially lovely because of the red of the cranberries and then the white kind of drifting through it. Kind of looks like snow to me. So I think this one looks very holiday-like. Now, of course, I'm not going to put this on the shelf. I'm going to fix it up and show you how this comes out. I've got a bowl here. Now, remember, the idea with this is that it can either be a cranberry relish, which is like an uncooked product, or it can be a cranberry sauce. So I'm going to start by turning it into a relish. To do that, I'm just going to empty it into my bowl, my dish, probably the dish I would serve it in. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a half a cup of water to this. It does not take much to turn this into a fresh relish. I am going to put it down into the jar, get up those last bits of cranberries, last bits of orange juice powder, and I'm just going to give this a mix. Now, this is something that can be adjusted, depending on where you live and how you prefer things. Sometimes you might need a little more water. I've heard people tell me who live in moister or drier climates that they have different kind of water needs, and also people who live at different varying elevations. I think that can affect it as well. But it does not take much to bring these berries back to life, just like if they had been fresh berries that we ground up. So I've got that all mixed together so it's all moistened, and I'm going to cover this up and let this sit for a little bit, and then I can test it and make sure that I've got enough moisture in there with my berries. Has a nice fresh orange taste, which is really nice. I'm just going to let this set for about 10 or 15 minutes. I will probably stir it a time or two in between, and I'll see you back here when this is done. All right, this has been sitting about 10 minutes. I have stirred it once. You can see it's got plenty of moisture because, I don't know, that was enough water. I'm going to give this a little taste just to be double sure. Got a spoon here to taste with. Very good, very fresh tasting, not too sweet, not too tart, just perfect. Good fresh orange flavor in there. This is really good. You could always add more sugar if you wanted, but this is perfect for me. So this is how you would enjoy it as a relish. And let me show you how you would turn this into a cooked cranberry sauce. Now, to turn this into a cooked cranberry sauce, I'm going to use my butane stove and just a little saucepan. And I'm going to go ahead and just put all of the cranberry relish into the saucepan, along with any juices that have accumulated. Now, if you did not want to have relish, you could always just go straight to this step. You don't have to make it into a relish first. You could just put the dry mix in the pan and add the entire amount of water. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add another half a cup of water. So it was half a cup of cold water to make the relish. Now I'm just going to put in one more half cup to get the sauce going. All right, so I'm going to add my half a cup of water additional, and I'm just going to put the heat on and get this simmering, and I'm just going to simmer it covered for about 10 minutes. And of course, just like the sugar amount, the water amount, the simmering time, you can also vary according to your taste and how you like your cranberry sauce, but about 10 minutes is fine for me. Once again, I am going to use a lid just to keep the heat in and the moisture in as well. Now, as soon as this starts to simmer, I am going to turn it down a little bit. I just want it to be simmering. I don't want it to be boiling hard. I am just going to stir this occasionally. And as it's cooking, you can also mash down the berries or the cranberries if you want them a little bit sort of more mushed. But we did take care of that a lot in the beginning by that rough chop that we gave them before we put them in the jar. All right, so this has been simmering now for 10 minutes. So this is really cooked down nicely, and all that's left to do now is just let this cool, and it'll be ready to serve alongside a beautiful holiday dinner. And here is our gorgeous jewel-toned cranberry sauce. So delicious. It gives just the right sweet tart touch to the holiday plate. It is delicious and beautiful to boot. If you're watching this video within the first couple days that it's released, many of the ingredients I used in these meal in a jar recipes are on sale with some awesome discounts for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. There are discounts up to 50% off. I'll put links down below and on the screen for you to check out the discounts and get some exclusive coupon codes. No matter when you're watching, you can always keep up to speed with what's on sale and get new discount codes by texting alert to my number that I'll put on your screen. I usually send 2 to 3 texts a month. If you really don't want to miss a deal and you are the kind of person who can just scroll on by and ignore a message if it doesn't interest you, you can join our insider list by texting insider to my number. Depending on the time of year, I may text my insider list more like 2 to 3 times a week. You can also bookmark tryfreezedried.com/all and check back anytime for updated sale and coupon code information from our favorite sources, as well as joining our Deals and Steals group on Facebook. Emergency preparedness becomes a lot less daunting when you break it down over time and grab bargains whenever you see them. This time of year, it's also very practical to give the gift of preparedness to many of the people on your gifting list. Coming up next, I've got a complete holiday meal in a bag. The idea with meals in a bag is they're completely shelf stable and contain everything you need to cook a complete meal, down to and including any water you need to prepare the meal. So if the power's out and you're stressed out and your family's hungry, you're not going to be rummaging around your dark cupboards with a flashlight, gathering random ingredients, and then finally just giving up and opening a can of SpaghettiOs. You have a no-brainer meal ready to go. Just grab a bag off the shelf, and in no time, you're serving up a home-cooked meal. People have found that they're good for so much more than emergencies, though. They are great anytime that you just need a quick, easy meal with no planning involved. They're great when you need someone like your non-cooking spouse or teen to fix a meal. They're also good for camping trips, and they're wonderful for blessing others. Whether it's a family member, an acquaintance, or a community member, someone who's had a baby, an illness, a surgery, maybe a death in the family, or just fallen on hard times, meals like these are the perfect gift for them to have a meal on their schedule. Many people also like to create meals in a bag to donate to food pantries, church pantries, or blessing boxes. This meal today includes everything you need for a complete holiday meal with some special touches. And this time, everything in the bag and even the bag itself are from Dollar Tree. Why Dollar Tree? Dollar Tree challenges can be a nod to the fact that some people are very limited to where they have to shop. Whatever the reason, some people may only be able to get to a Dollar Tree or a similar store to do their shopping. For me, it's also an exercise in creativity and thinking outside the box because their grocery selection is so limited that you really have to get your creative juices flowing and work with what you have available. Much like having to work with what's in your home pantry or what you get in a food pantry box, for instance. So hopefully these ideas can help someone. Of course, Dollar Tree isn't always the cheapest place to buy certain things, and most of us do have other options for shopping. And not every Dollar Tree has all the same items all the time. So feel free to get these items wherever it's easiest or cheapest for you. Let's get started on this meal. So here I've got all of the foods that we would need for our complete holiday dinner. So to start with, I've got a couple of cans of turkey down here, Dollar Tree turkey. And I've got this can of gravy. So this is Campbell's turkey gravy. This is actually really pretty tasty. We've tried these canned gravies from Dollar Tree and they're really good. Now, my Dollar Tree only seems to stock turkey around this time of year. They get it in kind of right before Thanksgiving, and that's the only time I can find it there. So if you can't find the turkey, of course, there's several different options. You could use dollar store chicken, not quite the same thing, but very, very close. They also sell this turkey chicken with gravy. So it's chicken and gravy all in one can. So you could get a few cans of this, and you wouldn't even need to have the can of gravy. Of course, if you're not limited to Dollar Tree, you can get canned turkey from other stores. I've gotten this one from Walmart. This is probably about twice the size of the dollar store can, but it's far more than twice the price. So honestly, the Dollar Tree usually is a pretty good value when it comes to their canned chicken and turkey. And then if you really want to go all out, if I am not limiting myself to Dollar Tree, I like to grab a can of the Keystone turkey. So this is the really big can, 28 ounces. They also have a smaller can, 14 ounces, which is still a little bit bigger than one of these cans. I have done the math. I don't think I've done the math with the turkey, but I've done the math with the chicken, and buying the equivalent amount of Dollar Tree's chicken to equal one of these big cans, I think it still ends up being a little bit cheaper to do the Dollar Tree one, even though the cans are smaller and you have to buy more. So lots of different options if you cannot find this turkey. They also have a few different options for the gravy. So I've also gotten like a packet of turkey gravy like this at Dollar Tree. So whatever you can find and whatever works best for what you want to do, there's lots of different options. Next, of course, I've got mashed potatoes. So these are the Idahoan. I've got 2 pouches here. These are the mashed potatoes that they have at Dollar Tree a lot. What I like about the Idahoan is they're complete. You only need to add water. They also sometimes have Betty Crocker brand. Those call for milk and butter and other ingredients. So I always stick with the Idaho, and I just got the plain buttery flavored for this meal. I've also got a box of stuffing back here. Gotta have stuffing for Thanksgiving, and we're gonna do something a little bit different with this for this meal, just to make it a little bit different and a little bit more special. And then I've got some veggies. So I've got my canned yams here, 2 cans of these, they're stacked up. And I've got my canned green beans. And then I've also got a can here of cranberry sauce. This is another thing that Dollar Tree only seems to have right around the Thanksgiving holiday. So, you know, if your store doesn't happen to have it, you can always use a can of cranberry sauce from somewhere else. This is jellied cranberry sauce. I'm actually using it in a recipe that typically calls for whole berry, but I did not find whole berry cranberry sauce at my Dollar Tree, but whichever you can find will work for this recipe. Then I've got some extra ingredients that are gonna kind of pull these together into our tasty meal. So I've got my cream of mushroom soup. I've got a little tub of French onion dip here, a little secret ingredient. I've got my crispy onions. These are like the French fried onions. And of course, I've got my bag of marshmallows here. This is a slightly smaller bag that they have at Dollar Tree sometimes. So I got this because I don't need a ton of marshmallows. So I got the smallest bag I could find. And then I also have some bottles of water. So I've got 3 of these 16.9 ounce bottles of water here. This is the one that my dollar store carries. It doesn't really matter what brand, but I like these meal bags to be complete. So I like them to include any water that you need to prepare them, because if you are in an emergency situation, you might not have, you know, running water, and then your water is at a premium. So you want to have, you know, extra water to prepare the meals. So I include that in the bag. And then one final thing I've included is a little pack of biscuit mix here, the Just Add Milk biscuit mix, to round out the meal. And you'll see how we're going to do this a little bit differently. Now for the bag, now if you watch a lot of my meal in a bag videos, you know I have some bags that I typically use, but I have done them before in these paper gift bags from Dollar Tree. So in the spirit of doing this all completely Dollar Tree, I am going to use this Dollar Tree gift bag. However, this is a good sort of example of why it's not always cheapest to buy things at Dollar Tree, because the bags that I typically use, I buy them in bulk. I buy a pack of 100 usually, because I make a lot of meals in a bag. So I end up paying about 40 cents per bag. This paper gift bag came in it was 1 bag for $1.25. So I pay about 1/3 as much for the bags that I buy on Amazon. Of course, you may not want to spend $40 all at once and have a pack of 100 bags. And in that case, buying single bags might work better for you. And this is a really big meal here. This is the whole meal, side dishes, you know, multiple dishes. So this is a lot more ingredients than what I typically have in a meal in a bag. So a lot of time a smaller bag will work. All right, let's get these ingredients into the bag. All right, so I'm gonna start with my stuffing mix. Next, I'm gonna add my turkey, my gravy, my yams, my green beans, my cranberry sauce, my cream of mushroom, my little tub of onion dip. I'm gonna add my potatoes, my crispy onions, my bottles of water, my biscuit mix, and my marshmallows. And now our bag is ready to go on the shelf. But instead of putting this away, I'm going to show you what we do to turn this into a complete holiday dinner. One thing you can also include with your bag is some pans, some disposable pans, just in case you are in a situation when you might not want to have to do any dishes, or maybe you are in a hotel or you give this to somebody who is in a situation where maybe they don't have pans. So these come as a set of 2, and these are a good pan to use for some of the side dishes that we're doing. You also might be able to use something like these brownie pans from Dollar Tree. They're $1.25 a piece, but they're a real reusable metal pan. So they're only twice the price of these, because you get 1 for $1.25 or 2 for $1.25. You don't have to include the pans. It's just something that I sometimes like to do. And in this case, because our bag is pretty full, I would probably set the bag right in the pans, and it would be delivered just like this, or set on the shelf just like this. So the first thing I'm going to do is get a couple of our casseroles, side dishes ready to bake. And I'm going to start with a yam berry bake. So it's going to be cranberries and yams baked together. So I'm going to go ahead and empty my cranberry sauce right into this pan. And I'm going to come at this with a pastry blender, but you could use anything. You could use a fork, you could use a spatula. I'm just trying to kind of break this up into small chunks without completely pulverizing it, without completely liquefying it. So like I mentioned, the original recipe that I took this inspiration from calls for whole berry sauce, but my Dollar Tree didn't have whole berry sauce. So I'm going to do kind of the same thing with this jellied. So I'm just kind of cutting this up into chunks that would be kind of similar to the whole berry sauce. And so next I'm going to come at this with my yams. So I'm going to open these up and I'm going to drain them and I'm going to reserve the juice. It's actually a syrup, so it's a very sweet juice. I like to save all of the liquid in these meals and utilize it where I can. Even if you can't utilize it in the meal, it can usually be drunk or fed to an animal or added to a different recipe. This sweet syrup might be good to serve with some oatmeal or use in a dessert if it's not used in the meal. But I'm going to show you how we're going to use this in a little bit of a different way in this meal. I'm going to go ahead and drain it right into my cranberry can just because I have it. You could drain it into a paper cup. You could drain it into, some sort of a Tupperware container. But since I have this can already here and it's just going to get thrown away, I'm going to use this to drain my juice. And then I'm just going to add my drained yams into the pan. I'm going to set my oven to 350 because that's what I'm going to bake any of these baked side dishes at. So that's what I'm going to do while I'm getting this stuff ready. But I am going to get pretty much everything prepared before I get it all in the oven. And these are all dishes that are very forgiving as far as time and temperature. So if you are in an emergency situation and you have some sort of an alternative oven, like we have a propane oven, we have an oven that runs with like canned heat, alcohol gel fuel. So if you have something like that, sometimes you can't get the temperature where you want it, or it's hard to keep it regulated. So these are recipes that are going to be fine if you have to cook them at a lower temperature longer, or if it's fluctuating all around. Whatever you have to deal with, these will work. And there are plenty of ways that you can do these just on a stovetop. Pretty much if you don't have access to an oven, if the power's out and you don't have any kind of oven to use in a power outage, it's still going to be fine. So I am going to use my scrapey spatula to just kind of chop these yams up into smaller bits, not really small, but just into more bite-sized pieces. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to be tossing them with the cranberries to kind of combine all of this. So just try to get this as evenly distributed as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect, and then just kind of spread it out in the pan. That's one good thing about this because it's spread into a pretty thin layer. And that's going to give us more of the good marshmallow topping on every bit of the casserole, but it's also going to make that it cooks pretty quickly. So if you are dealing with, situations where you have to bake in something alternative, this is going to go really, really quickly. All right, I'm going to set this one aside for now. We are going to have marshmallows on this, but they don't go on until the very end or they'll burn. Another thing is the pan size can vary. Like you could fit these into many different pan sizes as well, smaller pans if you needed to, and it would still work well. So now I'm going to work on the green beans. And before I put the beans in, I'm going to end up making the sauce to begin with. So obviously we're going to use our cream of mushroom soup. I am just going to use my favorite can scraping spatula here. It's a little worse for the wear. I really need to get a second one. I've had this one forever and I use it all the time. I love that it can clean this little rim. It cleans right under the rim like that. It just is the perfect spatula for cleaning out a can of soup because I do not like to waste by leaving anything in the can. The next thing I'm going to add is this little tub of creamy onion dip, French onion dip. So this is sort of inspired by some of our favorite casseroles. There's a couple of casseroles my family loves. A French onion chicken noodle casserole and a French onion beef noodle casserole. And both of them use a tub of French onion dip along with cream soups and things like that to make a really delicious casserole. And I thought that this would be a great addition to a green bean casserole as well. So that's going to make this a little bit special this year. Just going to go ahead and mix this together. And now I'm going to add in my green beans. Now these I'm going to drain and I'm going to keep the liquid from these as well, because if I needed to thin out the sauce a little bit, I can use some of the green bean liquid, whereas you might usually use milk, but we don't have milk in this bag. The other thing is we're going to need liquid for other parts of this meal, like the stuffing and the potatoes, and we can utilize some of the vegetable water so we don't have to use as much of our plain water. But once again, you can also drink the liquid from these cans if you're in an emergency and you are desperate for liquid. This would also have some electrolytes, usually from the salt that's added to it. It's going to have probably some minerals that have leached out of the vegetables, because you do lose a lot of the nutrition in your vegetables when you can them, because a lot of it leaches out into the liquid and the heat destroys some. Now, I did want to mention this is mixed cut green beans. I'm not really sure what that is, but you can also get French cut green beans at Dollar Tree. Whatever, shape and cut of green beans you find will work for this recipe. Some people prefer the French for this recipe. I just like to use regular green beans. All right, now I'm just going to mix all this in to our mushroom and onion sauce. Now you can see that these would definitely fit into a smaller pan. So you could use those brownie pans, or even probably an 8-inch square pan would work. I like to spread them out in these bigger pans because I love the toppings, whether it's the marshmallows on the sweet potatoes or the crispy onions on the green beans. I like a good ratio of topping. And so this way you get more topping. And if you're serving a lot of people, I think people tend to take a little bit less if it's spread out thin, so it can stretch further and everybody's going to get some of that topping, as opposed to some people getting stuck with the lower layers of the casserole. But that's just a personal preference. So you could totally put this in whatever pan you have and whatever pan you are going to like best. Now we're going to go in with our crispy onions. Now some people will stir some of these into the mixture, so you could do that. Like I mentioned, I really like them crispy on the top, so I like to keep them all on the top. That's another matter of personal preference. I do love these Dollar Tree bags of crispy onions because they're the perfect amount for like one casserole dish. And we use these as a topping on lots of different casseroles, not just at the holidays. So I do like to have these. They're great for meals in a bag because they're the perfect amount for one sort of pan. This is another item that I don't know if they sell year round. I've had times I couldn't find them and then they get them back in around the holidays. So I do stock up on these little bags when I see them. You can crunch them up a little bit if you want to have smaller pieces over the top of your casserole. You could even add another can of green beans into this if you wanted to serve more people, because there's definitely enough of the creamy sauce to stretch, I think, for another can of green beans. And you could do it in the same size pan, same amount of everything else, just add an extra can of green beans. And that kind of goes for everything in this meal, depending on how many people you're serving. You can increase some of the bones of the food, like the turkey, the green beans, the yams. You can increase those amounts and kind of probably keep all the rest of the things the same and just be able to serve more people. So this one is ready to set aside, and then we're going to move on to the next step as well. Next, I'm going to do the stuffing, because I'm going to do something a little bit different with the stuffing to make this meal a little bit different and a little bit more special. So I'm going to make these into stuffing cups that we can put our turkey and gravy inside of, just a little bit different, fancier presentation that'll make this meal feel special, even though it's just a completely shelf-stable meal in a bag. I am going to start by draining the juice off of my turkey, because this is some more extra water that we're going to have, and this is going to have that good turkey flavor. It's going to be broth, so this is going to be really good to use as part of the liquid for our stuffing. I'm going to be needing 1.5 cups, so I've got a 2-cup measure here that I can measure all my liquid into. So that gave me about almost 3/4 cup of liquid. So now I just need to make up the rest. So I can use some of the green bean liquid. I can use the water that I have in my bottles, whatever liquid I have to use to get up to 1.5 cups. Now I'm going to open up the stuffing and get it into a bowl. And now I just need to boil my liquid, and then I'm going to pour it into the stuffing. So I'm going to go ahead and do this in the microwave since I do have the power on, but obviously a small saucepan over an emergency stove would be an option if the power's out. So once you've got your liquid boiling, you can go ahead and just pour this over the stuffing. I'm going to give this a good mix, get everything moistened. And then I'm just going to cover this up and let this sit until it's all absorbed and soft. You can cover this up with anything, plastic wrap, tin foil, a paper plate. You can even just use one of the casserole dishes and set that right on top. That's going to keep it covered, and it's going to start to warm our casserole a little bit too. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. It only needs to sit for about 5 minutes. Mix it around a little bit more. I'm not really fluffing it like it says to fluff because we are doing something totally different with this. So we don't necessarily want it fluffed. We want it more mushed. I'm going to use this to make stuffing cups that we're going to serve our turkey and gravy in. I've done this lots of different ways, and I find that silicone muffin pans are the easiest for getting the cups out after they're baked because you can kind of press them from the bottom and they just release really easily. So this is what I definitely recommend for doing this. Of course, if you do not have a way to bake or you don't have the muffin pans or anything like that, or whoever you're giving this meal to, they can just form the stuffing into little nests on the plate and kind of have the same type of idea, or just serve them completely separately like you might any other time. I just thought this made it a little bit more special. Now, these are regular size muffin cups. They make a pretty small cup, but if you consider the small amount of turkey that we're going to have, that might be good. I also have these jumbo muffin cups that can make a little bit bigger of a cup. And all you do is just put some stuffing in and just press it out to form a cup shape, and just make sure that you have plenty across the bottom. You can add more stuffing as you need it, and just form yourself a little cup. Of course, you could use a different utensil for this if you're squeamish about getting your fingers messy, but I don't mind doing it with my hands. I think this works pretty well. All right, so now I've got all of the sort of side dishes ready to go in the oven. So I'm going to get these baking. Now, I mentioned I don't like wasting a lot of extra liquid. So what I'm going to do with the extra yam liquid is I'm going to make some sort of yam biscuits. Now, I feel like this meal has plenty of carbs with the potato and the stuffing, but I know sometimes we just feel like we need to have a roll or a biscuit or some kind of bread with our holiday dinner. So this actually calls for milk, but we're going to do it with the extra syrup from the yams. So half a cup. So I've got half a cup of my reserved yam liquid here. Now, this is not a very traditional biscuit pan, but I think I'm going to use one of these brownie pans just because I have it. And I have it right handy. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stick these in the oven. And this says 400 for about 8 to 12 minutes. Next, I'm going to work on the potatoes, and I'm going to use my butane stove for this. Now, for 2 packets of potatoes, I'm going to need 4 cups of liquid. So I'm just going to heat that up to boiling in this pan. And once again, we've got our bottles of water, and we've also got our remaining liquid that we drained off of our vegetables. All right, so there's 4 cups of liquid. I'm going to bring this up to a boil and then add in my potatoes. Now, of course, it's always good to have a lid just to conserve fuel because it will heat faster because it'll trap that heat in. All right, so now that this is boiling, basically, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off and just stir in these potatoes real quick. Right now, I'm just going to let these set for about 5 minutes, just like the stuffing. All right, so now that it's been that 5 minutes, these are all ready. And I'm just going to get them out of here and keep them warm while I warm up the turkey and gravy. So a really good thing to have in situations like this, whether it's an emergency where you might not have a microwave or a warming tray, or even just for entertaining, is an insulated serving dish. These are great for emergencies. It's kind of like a thermos, but for a bowl of food. And you can even pre-warm them like you would with a thermos by pouring a little boiling water into it and letting it sit, and then dumping that out and drying it off real quick. And then you've got it pre-warmed, and it'll keep your food even hotter. So I love having these insulated serving dishes on hand. In fact, what I did with this one is I just turned the open bowl upside down on top of my pot while it was sitting for that 5 minutes, and that preheated the container for me. So I'm going to set this aside to keep warm in its insulated serving dish and finish up the turkey. I am going to use this same dish just in the interest of saving dishes. I pretty much got all the potato out. There's maybe just a tiny bit of starch in there that's not going to really hurt the turkey and gravy. If anything, it'll add to it. But really quickly, I am going to take out the green bean casserole. You can see it's browned and bubbly, so this is ready to go. I'm going to set this aside to keep warm while I get the turkey done really quickly. That was only about 15 minutes. And the yam berry bake is all hot and steamy and bubbly. So this is about ready to. I'm going to leave this in the oven because at the last minute, we're going to put on those marshmallows and give the topping a toast. But I definitely need to keep an eye on that while we do it, because that can go south real fast and burn. So I am just going to go ahead and dump my cans of turkey into this pan. Now remember, you can add extra cans of turkey if you want to serve more people and have more meat. I didn't want to make a huge meal for this video because we have to eat all the leftovers. So I've got my 2 cans of turkey and I've got my can of gravy. Now this is going to be quite a bit of gravy, and I'm planning to use some of this for the potatoes, but instead of warming it separately, I just am going to put it all together, and then I can kind of scoop the turkey and gravy portion out and use some of the plain gravy that's in there for the potatoes, if that makes any sense. So now I'm just going to give this a really quick warming. Break up our turkey a little bit into bite-sized chunks. This isn't going to take but just a couple of minutes to warm up really well. All right, so this is warm. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. Put the lid on that, set that back. Now those muffins, those stuffing cups have been in the oven for probably about 20 minutes. And they are looking really good. They are looking dried and crispy around the edges. So they are going to be easy to pop out of here. I'm going to let them cool a little bit. And then we're going to be able to serve up our meal. In the meantime, I'm going to take this bubbly yamberry bake out, and I'm going to sprinkle some of these marshmallows over top. Now we may not use all of these, even though it's a smaller bag, and that kind of depends on how thick you like your marshmallows on your yams and what size of a pan you put this in to bake. But the rest of the marshmallows can always be saved for something else because they are shelf stable. In fact, what I thought of was adding in some packs of cocoa into the bag to use up any extra marshmallows that are left over, because my Dollar Tree does have Swiss Miss cocoa, boxes of Swiss Miss cocoa for $1.25. So I think that looks pretty good. It does leave me with probably a third of these marshmallows. So that could be used with the cocoa, for instance, or anything else. I'm going to put this in and I'm going to put it on broil, and I'm going to watch it really carefully because it goes really fast. All right, I'm starting to smell some sugar. It is time to get these out. If you happen to have any oatmeal packets, I have also used a couple of maple brown sugar instant oatmeal packets with a tiny bit of the sweet potato syrup to make a streusel type of topping for this casserole. And I've even added a marshmallow layer on top of that, and it was fantastic. But I haven't found oatmeal packets at my Dollar Tree lately, so I left that off this time, but feel free to include it in your bag. All right, now let's get ready to serve our meal on a Dollar Tree Thanksgiving plate. Dollar Tree is kind of knocking it out of the park lately with their plates, I think. All right, so here is one of our stuffing cups. It still has plenty of soft, moist stuffing. It's just the edges that are crispy. And, you know, it's a little dry in here. That is going to moisten back up with the turkey. And actually, my family is kind of the type that kind of likes the crusty edges of the stuffing anyways. I'm going to use one of these spoons so I can get mostly meat with a little gravy for my cup. And then have some of that gravy left over for my potato. So there is my turkey and stuffing cup. I'm going to serve up some of our potato that stayed nice and warm. And I'm going to use some of just mostly the gravy for the potato. Plenty of extra gravy. Now I just want to show you, here are a couple of the stuffing cups that I made with a regular muffin tin. You can see kind of how big they are in comparison. These were made with a regular silicone muffin tin as opposed to the jumbo one. And there is our meal in a bag holiday plate. Stuffing cups with turkey and gravy, mashed potatoes, French onion green bean casserole, and our yamberry bake. And now to finish it off with a nice warm sweet potato biscuit. Super, super good. This meal is a bit more involved than most of my meals in a bag. If it's a grid down emergency, depending on what off-grid cooking implements you have in your gear, it may or may not be feasible to cook this as shown, but just remember that everything here could be simply heated in a pan on the stove, if necessary, on your emergency stove, obviously. It just might not be quite the same presentation, but there are plenty of instances that we might use these meals in a bag when the power is on as well, just like I mentioned before. Likewise, if you're a person who doesn't want your foods to touch or mix together, you could certainly serve the stuffing and turkey separately, the sweet potatoes and cranberry sauce, and so on and so forth. No matter how you put it together, you've still got quite the holiday meal in the simple paper sack. We've had a ton of requests for printable versions of my meal in a bag recipes, so we recently started offering them. It sometimes takes a little bit for me to get them done, so you can text bags to my number that I'll put on the screen for you and down below in the video description, and I'll text you a link when the printables are ready. You can also visit mealinabag.com to see the recipes that we've gotten up so far. And I've got many previous meal in a bag videos that haven't made it to the website yet. I'll put that playlist down below as well if you want to check that out. I hope you enjoyed these shelf-stable holiday recipes. It's always good to have a backup plan and be prepared for anything that may come our way. Besides, these meals and dishes are yummy and comforting no matter when you serve them. Serving special dishes can make any meal feel special, and we all need that every once in a while. Don't forget to check out all the resources below in the video description and the pinned comment. If you're looking for some more holiday meal inspiration, I've got a Thanksgiving pot pie meal in a bag recipe that I'll put down below for you, and another episode full of holiday meals in a bag that I will put up on the screen. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me a Christmas tree emoji down in the comments, and don't forget to check out this video next for some more Prepper Pantry holiday meals. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.